Buenos días, good morning, Nogalenses. We are here on this beautiful Thursday morning. I'm here with, what's the name of your program specifically that this is one's for? Sorry.
We are the Domestic and Sexual Violence Program at Mariposa Community Health Center.
Okay, so I'm here with the Domestic and Sexual Violence Program at Mariposa for a special segment about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's a very, very important month and very important to this community as well. We've got Ryan, Alexa, Diana, and Edith. Thank you guys so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, so let's start with what is Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
So October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and this is a time where we are honoring those that have passed from domestic violence. We are celebrating those that have survived, and we are shedding light on the situation for those that may need help if they're in that situation. So it is across the state, across the nation, we are celebrating Domestic Violence Awareness Month through different activities. We've done some educational pieces. There was a candlelight vigil earlier in the month. We've got purple lights on some of our buildings in the community. So we're just trying to do different things to raise awareness and education in order to prevent domestic violence, as well as to let people know about those resources so they can get help.
Of course, obviously, that's awesome. So, what is domestic violence? You know, I mean, I know the broad term, but I know that there's intricacies, there are details that really define what domestic violence is.
And I think we'll answer this in English and Spanish, right? So, domestic violence is overarchingly violence within a home. So typically we think of intimate partner violence between two spouses, boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, it doesn't matter. But it could also be like elder abuse within the home or other violence, family violence. Yeah. For us specifically, as we talk today, we're probably going to refer to more of that intimate partner violence. But that can be physical abuse. That's always usually what people think of when we hear domestic violence. But it can be emotional abuse. It can be economic abuse, psychological, verbal, through social media, digital abuse. There's all types of abuse. And each form is really about that power dynamic. The abuser, that person is trying to put control, instill fear with their spouse, their partner. And that can be very dangerous. It can include that physical violence, and it doesn't have to. But what's happening is that person is being broken down, and they're in this relationship that is very unhealthy, and the impacts are very intense.
Yeah, there's physical impacts, even though it's not a direct physical abuse. Absolutely.
Yeah. And sexual abuse also is part of domestic violence.
Yes, for sure.
So
and I think it's important that does apply even to intimate partners.
Yes, exactly.
There's still sexual violence.
There is still sexual violence, and a lot of people don't realize that. There's still some stigma around that, but within intimate partners, sexual violence is a big part of that power and control dynamic.
Absolutely. Y en español también, ¿qué es la violencia doméstica y qué significa esta comunidad?
La violencia doméstica, como le dijo Ryan en inglés, vamos a tratar de ahora ponerlo en español. Sí. No solamente es entre una pareja, casados, no casados, viviendo juntos, es también violencia contra la gente adulta, contra los niños. La violencia doméstica no solamente son golpes a una persona, es también el abuso emocional, económico, social, aislamiento, que pasa mucho, que están aislando a las personas, que no las dejan ni ver a sus familias. Los niños vienen siendo los sobrevivientes secundarios de esta violencia. También lo que está pasando, lo que estamos viendo mucho es eso, mucho abuso económico. También pasa mucho con lo que es la gente que se casan con alguien de aquí y que no tienen papeles. Es la forma en que los manipulan, es la forma en que los están teniendo dentro de ese
Sí, es
ciclo
cierto.
vicioso.
Ahorita lo vamos a mencionar en inglés también, porque eso es muy importante. Muy importante mencionar.
¿Algo más que quieras agregar?
Estamos tratando de darles la información y la educación. En veces creemos, como dice mi compañera, que tiene que ser físico, pero estamos experimentando que está habiendo mucho emocional. Y es una de las cosas de la violencia que no se nota. Si hay golpe físico, lo vas a ver en una persona y
Sí.
puedes decir, sabes que esta persona está pasando por violencia
Pero
física.
no es la única manera de uso.
Y no es la única manera de abuso. Entonces, cuando lo ves físico, le puedes ofrecer la ayuda, pero la mayoría de las veces el abuso es emocional, es financiero, es verbal. Entonces, nosotros estamos tratando de ampliar y de educar la comunidad de que hay recursos, pero también de que está pasando esta situación.
Muy bien. So, one of the things that was mentioned in Spanish, or a couple of the things, is that even if the child is not a direct victim of the abuse, they are a secondary victim, right? And
Yeah. So, children in homes of domestic violence, 90% of those children are witnessing that violence. I know a lot of times parents try to protect them, maybe that argument's in another room, but children are exposed and they're witnessing it. And that impacts children's mental health, their viewpoint on relationships, on how to be treated, about respect, self-esteem, fear. There's a lot of things that it starts to put that child at risk for entering a domestic violence relationship themselves.
It's conditioning. It's early
Yeah.
childhood conditioning. Isn't it?
Suicidal ideation increases, acting out in school, their grades go down. There's a lot of things that it does to a child.
For sure. And not every child responds equally. Not all children
Exactly.
respond
Every
equally.
child's going to react differently, but you know that what's happening is that there is a childhood trauma that's occurring, and this child is going to carry that. And how they react and how they respond is different. It depends on protective factors, it depends on resiliency. It's just it makes things at a higher risk for that child.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that was mentioned is that immigration status can be used as a tool for abuse as well.
Yeah, that is something we see a lot in our community, where if one of the partners is from Mexico and they're in a relationship here, and that partner that has citizenship can use papers as a form of manipulation, as a way of power and control. I'll make sure that you get deported. I'll make sure that the kids will be taken away and that they're going to be mine. Things of that nature, where people feel afraid to call police, maybe because their papers and their documents aren't in order. So they're gonna take that abuse because they feel trapped. Do I call police and there's that fear of getting deported, or do I try to make this work with my partner?
For sure. So a couple of the things that I wanted to get into detail on is I think it's important that we define some of these types of abuse that are less common or that we as the public are less educated on. Okay. So financial abuse. I think that that's an important one because especially in hard times when money is tight, it seems like it can be an easier tool for a manipulator to use. So how is financial abuse, how does that happen?
Yeah.
Y también ahorita lo hacemos en español, por favor.
Okay. So financial abuse can be seen in different aspects. One could be that they don't have any control of any income that comes home. So they don't have control of any bills. They don't have control of like cash because they can use this money, right, to like run away or so. It comes when they don't have access to actual like money, any credit cards, or it could be the other way that that even for their own income, they have to provide their income to the partner, and they manage their money, they manage their accounts, they use their credit cards.
Wow.
So it could be seen like
So
in
use it
different.
either, one as to hold them back or to essentially spend their money.
Yes.
Wow. So and one of the things that I was thinking of that's probably is absolutely one of the ways that financial abuse happens is when one is handling the money, like you said, the person who doesn't have access to the money has to go to this person for their basic needs.
Yes.
You know, whether it's shampoo, toothpaste, things like that. So that's another way that it can absolutely be controlled.
Yeah.
And then another thing would be assets. If the home,
It's
the
not just
car,
cash or anything like that,
if
yeah.
that's in the abuser's name, then how are you supposed to leave that partner if you don't have a home anymore? You don't have, it just makes things harder, right? And that control is there. I don't have a car, it's in their name. So if I leave, how am I going to get to work? There's so many parts with financial abuse, especially if there's children, and that fear of, I've been a stay-at-home mom, I haven't worked in 10 years, how am I going to get a good paying job so I can provide for 3 kids, and rent is going up, and the job, pays are not going up with it, and it's puts people in that position of, do I leave? Do I stay? What's the economics in this household going to look like after? Going through court, child support, all that is very difficult. It's not something easy.
No, and it's scary, especially
And
in
it's
financial
terrifying,
stuff.
right? It is terrifying.
Awesome. Okay, en español también, el abuso financiero.
El abuso financiero es como dijeron mis compañeras. El hombre trabaja o vamos a ver una pareja, se acaban de conocer, se casan, los dos están trabajando, luego sale embarazada una muchacha y el esposo, ay, ¿sabes qué? Quédate en la casa para que cuides al niño, yo me encargo de todo. Es cuando empieza, cuando el abusador ya sabe lo que va a hacer, es como empieza. Se queda en casa, igual. Él tiene el control de todo lo que es financiero. Me ha tocado muchas víctimas que no están incluidas ni en los papeles de la casa, no están incluidas ni en el del banco, en nada que sea importante están incluidas. Todo lo maneja a la pareja.
Entonces ni como cosigner ni nada.
Nada.
Okay.
Entonces es como dicen ellas, ¿no? Si, decido que ya estoy enfadada de esto, me voy a salir, me voy a divorciar. ¿Qué hago? ¿Cómo me voy a sostener? ¿Cómo voy a sostener a mis niños? Porque ellas se van a llevar a sus niños.
Me imagino que el miedo que tiene es empezar de nuevo, ¿no?
Empezar de
Sí,
nuevo.
Pero también puede ser un beneficio que no está conectado a nada. Y es lo que estoy pensando yo, no estoy diciendo que sí o que todos piensan así. Pero puede ser una manera, ¿no? que pueden quedarse libre porque no están conectados financieramente o económicamente al muchacho o al pareja.
Sí, y es una de las ventajas, tienes razón, y en veces lo que pasa que la clienta o la persona que está pasando por esa situación en el momento no lo ve.
Sí,
Nosotros
pues,
tenemos que hacer con ella una guía. Lo que pasa con ese tipo de situaciones, nosotros empezamos a darles los recursos que hay aquí en el Condado de Santa Cruz. Empezamos a ver en qué las podemos guiar, cómo las podemos ayudar para que financieramente ellas empiecen a tener libertad. Una de las cosas que hacemos, no pedimos que dejen la relación porque es al tiempo de la persona, pero lo que hacemos en este tipo de situaciones es poderle decir, ¿sabes qué? Si no puedes trabajar todavía por estatus legal, puedes ir guardando poco a poquito lo que él te va dando. Sabes que si ya puedes trabajar, empezar a ver lugares donde la persona puede independizarse económicamente. Otra de las cosas también financieramente que ellos toman el control es de que sí les dejan gastar, sí les dejan usar las tarjetas, pero siempre ellos están checando dónde la usaron, cómo lo usaron, a qué hora la usaron. Si ella dijo que iba al mandado, cuándo fue la hora de la transacción. Entonces tenemos que estar bien conscientes que sí está pasando esa situación y de que es un control automáticamente, porque si quiere comprar la comida, si quiere comprar las cosas personales, simplemente un desodorante, un perfume, una crema, tienen que pedir permiso o están checando las transacciones que se están haciendo.
Wow. También es muy importante, yo pienso mencionar que no es puro la mujer que es la víctima, que pasa mucho a los hombres también, que también pueden ser víctimas de domestic violence. Well, so as I was saying, men are also very often victims of, especially when it's like financial or emotional type of abuse. Well, let's talk about emotional abuse before we get into the program. Let's define emotional abuse, because sometimes that can be difficult to identify in a relationship, especially when, different relationships have different dynamics. So how do you identify emotional abuse in a relationship?
I think emotional abuse is really when there's that imbalance of power and the abusive person in that relationship is attacking that person. And it doesn't have to be always with yelling. It doesn't always have to be super aggressive, cuss words, things like that. But it can be attacking that person's self-esteem, their value. You're making them feel worthless. You're picking at their self-esteem and breaking that person down slowly to gain more of that control and more of that power in that relationship. So, everyone has different personalities, and I know in our community, like carrilla, like we kind of tease each other and things like that. But it's really when it's about breaking that person down and you're finding those things that hurt them, and you're doing that. And it could be lying, it could be through manipulation. Gaslighting is a huge term right now with the younger crowd. And it's just, you're bullying your partner, essentially. And it's a pattern, and it can be also using your social media, making posts about them, or just things that would make them uncomfortable. And it's just really breaking them down. And we see that a lot. And that emotional abuse is huge, because if your self-esteem is getting lower, it's a little harder to climb out of that and to see that you're worth more, and that you're capable and that you don't deserve that. And it's so subtle sometimes, and that's where it gets tricky, because a lot of people don't even realize it. They think that's just okay, or that's how it is, or that's what they saw their parents go through. They saw that dynamic.
Like we talked about with the childhood conditioning. For sure.
Exactly. So it's very intense, emotional abuse.
Okay. El abuso emocional, ¿cómo se define el emocional? O cómo una persona puede identificar el abuso emocional?
Ok, el abuso emocional es cuando tu pareja, igual sea hombre o mujer, porque pasa en los dos géneros, te está poniendo abajo. Puede usar ciertas frases como: nunca vas a hacer nada, sin mí nunca vas a hacer nada, nunca vas a lograr nada. Aquí yo soy el que mando, no sirves para nada, ni siquiera sabes cocinar, no sabes ni cuidar a los niños, mira cómo andas, antes te vestías bien, hoy no eres una persona muy inteligente, para no usar palabras más groseras. Igual, o sea, es constante lo que te están diciendo, que te están minimizando.
No tienen que estar gritando.
No tienen que ser gritos.
Poco a poco, ¿no?
Y igual, ellos saben lo que están haciendo, todo empieza con amor, cariño, y va escalando, pero el que es abusador va a empezar así, y luego ya poquito a poco va a empezar. Relaciones pueden durar meses, años, uno nunca sabe. Con lo emocional es muy difícil, por lo mismo que te están haciendo sentir tan chiquita que no sabes tú cómo salir de ahí, no sabes cómo buscar la ayuda, te da miedo, porque piensas que tú, o sea, llega el punto de que tú piensas que eres todo eso.
Y aparte, pues, el estigma, ¿no? Hay mucho estigma en el abuso emocional, porque, como explicó antes, no es algo que se ve, que se nota. Y mucha gente no tiene la mentalidad de pensar que se puede abusar emocionalmente. Okay, well, let's get into the program. All right, tell me about your program, the services you guys offer, and how, if anybody's watching who thinks they might be a victim, or is a victim, or knows somebody who's a victim, might be able to reach out to you guys.
Sure. So we serve all of Santa Cruz County. We serve women, men, children, LGBTQ+. We serve everyone. So if you are a victim, or you believe you are a victim, or if you're just wanting information about it, we serve those for past or current domestic violence, dating violence, sexual violence, and stalking. So This is the team, and we work together and we do advocacy. So that is that case management where we're helping people get connected to those resources that they might need, behavioral health, medical care, food stamps, anything that person might need, housing vouchers, helping them just understand more about this type of violence. We do classes in the community. We also coordinate access to sexual assault nurse exams for those that have been sexually assaulted and they need either a forensic exam for evidence if someone's working with the police, or if they need just a welfare check to see if they're okay. We help people get connected to police and sheriff if they would like. It's not mandatory for adults. We don't make anyone report to police. We are mandatory reporters, though, for children.
Yeah, of course.
And then we also do lay legal advocacy, so we can help people get orders of protection, orders of injunction, navigate the system. We do court accompaniment, so we'll go to court with you for those trials and give you that emotional support. Awesome. We do a lot of different things, and it's free. You do not have to be a Mariposa patient. It's just for anyone in our community. And the easiest way to reach us is 520-375-6050 and ask to speak to an advocate. As well, we work with a lot of community partners and agencies, so that way they know how to refer. So if they're, if you're at Pinell Hispanic Council, they know how to refer to us. Hope knows how to refer, the police department, sheriff, the hospital, Circles of Peace, all types of agencies. We've been training and giving that education so they can refer to our program. We go out in the community. We will meet you wherever you need to be met, wherever's safest. So we are mobile. So if you feel safe meeting at church, we'll meet you at church. If it's in your home, if it's in a parking lot somewhere, it doesn't matter. So we do everything to keep people safe and to assess their safety and get them what they need. And we don't make anyone leave partners. That's all. It's all victim-led, survivor-led. And it's at their pace. So we're just here to offer that service to our community.
Awesome. Okay. Y en español, ¿qué es un programa que tienen ustedes y qué ofrecen a la comunidad?
Ok, como mencionó Ryan, nosotros servimos a todo el condado de Santa Cruz. No necesariamente tienen que ser pacientes de Mariposa. Lo que nosotros hacemos es brindamos servicios, ya sea lo que es manejo a corto o largo plazo de casos, ¿no? Ya sea dependiendo de lo que necesite esa persona. Y como mencionamos antes, nosotros realmente somos una guía, ¿no? Entonces, cada caso va a ser diferente. No tenemos realmente como una guía de, vamos a hacer esto, step 1, step 2, no. Va a ser dependiendo de la situación. Entonces, con eso dicho, pues, como mencionó Ryan, tenemos lo que es si necesitan acceso a cuidados médicos, ya sea un doctor primario, ya sea una asistencia de consejería, terapia, también ya un físico. Entonces con eso podemos también, después tenemos lo que es lo de Access, o si necesitan algún tipo de aseguranza, ya sea porque pues no hay un estatus migratorio legal. Entonces también de ahí pues podemos ver los otros servicios que ofrecemos, ya sea de food stamps o asistencia de utilidades. Con eso también vemos lo que es las aplicaciones de vivienda, ¿no? Ya sea que si necesitan una referencia para la sección 8, las casas de ANSA. Y como decimos, ayudamos con las aplicaciones.
Entonces, ayuden con todo, no es siempre con la situación de salir de la situación de abuso, ¿no? Es para seguir la vida, a seguir adelante, ¿no?
Así
afuera
es.
de esta vida.
Así es, entonces como le digo, pues no hay una guía de pasos para esto, entonces depende de la situación. Como mencionó Brian, también no necesariamente comprendemos, por ejemplo, que muchas veces no hay un medio de transporte. Nosotros podemos ofrecer ese transporte o igual ir a un lugar donde sea lo más adecuado para esa persona o en base a sus necesidades. También vemos lo que es la asesoría legal. hacemos referencias para esas asesorías legal o, como dijimos, acompañamos también el proceso. Entonces, si esta persona necesita empezar el proceso de divorcio, ok, vamos a una oficina donde te puedan ayudar con el proceso de divorcio. Se llegó el día de la corte, ok, nosotros te acompañamos a esa corte y somos como una ayuda moral, emocional, y pues para acompañar a esta persona en este proceso, ¿no? Que no es fácil. Con eso también vemos lo que es los grupos de soporte, ¿no? Aparte de lo que sería consejería y terapia, tenemos clases donde brindamos esa educación, ¿no? De lo que es, como mencionamos, muchos vienen con las emociones, todo lo que es mental, pues muy mal, ¿no? Entonces tratamos de ayudar para que esas personas se encuentren otra vez a sí mismas, recuperen todo eso que perdieron, ¿no? Entonces, igual estas clases son una guía para que ellas se recuperen, para que ellas se encuentren, ¿no? Entonces, cómo sostenerse uno, cómo el autoestima, sus puntos de vista, ¿no? Porque muchas veces uno pierde su esencia. Entonces, ¿de qué manera ellos van a volver a la vida? ¿De cómo se van a recuperar? Entonces, pues, son una de las cosas que hacemos.
Wow, qué bien. So she mentioned some programs in Spanish that we didn't talk about in English. So, like the beyond the just getting them through the situation of getting out of that relationship, you guys have services that move them forward.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's not just about that current situation, especially because we get a lot of people who've are realizing now that they've been through this in the past. So it's really about getting people connected to those resources to improve their life. So if they're getting out of this situation, it's not just about safety and fleeing and changing the locks, but can we help you find a job? Can we make sure that your medical well-being is taken care of, that you're getting that therapy, that you are getting this housing voucher application done? It's how can we help that situation, how we're helping you move forward. And the classes that we do also help with that. We do some of those 6 series classes so that way people have more education about what they went through and understanding about healthy relationships moving forward and boundaries and things like that. So it really just depends on that person and that situation, but our case management is tailored to that person. Some people might need a couple resources and they're good and they've got it on their own, and some people need that longer term management and a little bit more help.
Like we've talked about, I mean, it depends on the situation, it depends on the person. No one person or situation is the same.
Exactly. And domestic violence is common. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience domestic violence. Teen dating violence. 1 in 3 teens are likely to experience teen dating violence.
So, well, that's like one thing that I wanted to get into is we're talking a lot about, I mean, I feel like we're identifying more older adults, you know, a couple of violence, but teen dating violence is actually very common.
Yeah.
And sometimes more difficult to identify.
Yeah, especially for teens, because this is the first time they're in relationships. They're making mistakes. They're trying to figure out how to communicate. And sometimes that communication includes some of that manipulation, that lying, that emotional abuse. 1 in 12 teens can experience physical violence, and that could be pushing, that could be pulling. It could, you know, it doesn't always have to be extreme, but it's teens trying to figure out how to do this. And sometimes it's through that example at home or even through media. Sometimes media glorifies violence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's also another aspect
toxic
of it.
masculinity and all kinds of things that are very often.
And it's vice versa. I mean, I know when we talk about this, a lot of people's minds go to that boys and men are the abusers. Girls and women can also be the abusers. Yeah. And for those LGBTQ plus relationships, especially as a teenager where maybe you don't have a lot of family support or guidance, you're trying to navigate that relationship alone. You don't have that resource or that person that you can ask for advice. Is this healthy? Especially if you're hiding it. So it just opens up all different types of issues there for youth. And we do classes on teen dating violence to different youth groups and just trying to give kids education on healthy friendships, healthy relationships, boundaries, not just making sure that they're being treated well, but that they're treating others well as well.
So, in my psychology studies and stuff like that, one of the things, especially when it comes to youth psychology, one of the best resources that a child can have for getting out of abusive relationship is their friends, is a fellow teen who's so like that's one thing I think is great about these youth groups is it puts somebody in the schools who can
exactly
help
so
their friends. If
like Mariposa has the Summer
peers.
Youth Institute program where every summer there's 30 kids that are graduating, and part of that
That's a good plug.
yeah
That's a great plug.
part of that is learning about teen dating violence and domestic violence, and that way we have teens in our schools that are prepared and educated. And when we do those classes, we always tell them like the best way you can help your friends is by telling them what you've learned. And that's what we're trying to do. Teens rely on each other. They are each other's source of information, for guidance, for gossip, for everything.
Yeah.
And we want them to
And
be...
they trust each other more than they trust adults.
And a lot of times, too, teens are afraid of getting in trouble by their parents, by those adults in their lives. They're in
I
that...
remember.
Yeah, they're in that relationship that's abusive, unhealthy, toxic, whatever word you want to use. And they're afraid to tell mom and dad because they're going to get lectured, they're going to get yelled at, I told you, or they're hiding that they have a boyfriend or girlfriend. And that right there, that relationship dynamic between mom and dad, if your child doesn't feel confident to tell you those problems, they're going to try and problem solve their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can get dicey.
That is a very important point to make, is that, I mean, without driving it too much, because I'm not a child psychologist or a family psychologist or a psychiatrist, but it is important for parents to know that their kids are safe talking to them about whatever is going on in their lives without being judged, really.
Yeah.
Before we go and we cover this in Spanish, because I do want to talk about this in Spanish, is another thing that I want to touch on the same subject of youth. We are focusing a lot on couple abuse. But sometimes for a teenager or a child, it's harder for them to identify what is abuse in the home. Because it's not like we've talked about, it's not always physical abuse. Now, physical abuse is the most obvious, but even children can be abused. Like I said, I know that this isn't the focus of what we're talking about today, but it is important. It's something I want to touch on. What can a teenager, child, anybody do if they feel like they're being abused emotionally or however it is in the home? So
I think for children and youth, the easiest thing is to tell someone at school, right? So the schools, everyone there is a mandatory reporter. Yes. When you go to your doctor's appointment with your pediatrician, you can tell the doctor, you can tell the MA, reach out to those adults and let them know what you're experiencing. It's not easy. But there are people in our community that we have the responsibility and the obligation to keep you safe. And, talking to your parents about what you're seeing or what you're feeling is there, or your grandparents or your tias and tios, whoever. But at least we know if you're a child, you're in school, you can tell someone at your school. And they're going to reach out, and there's going to be protocols in place to help take care of them.
For sure.
And then also just learning, I think for kids too, it's about understanding like friendships and what a healthy friendship is, because maybe you can't control the relationships at home, but you can control what type of friendships you're going to make.
Of course.
So
for sure.
It depends.
All right. Ahora en español, ¿no? Lo de los jóvenes, del abuso en la casa o entre pareja y entre ellos, y también en la casa, cómo se pueden identificar y qué pasos pueden tomar para salir o mejorar esas situaciones.
Sí se está viendo mucho, como estamos mencionando, que la violencia entre estudiantes, entre jóvenes, sí está pasando mucho. Yo tengo un hijo de 16 y escucho conversaciones, escucho que se hacen no solamente entre jovencito y jovencita, entre las mismas jovencitas, cómo se están agrediendo, cómo se están tratando, cómo en un momento están muy amigas y de repente se están ellas mismas haciendo bullying. Me ha tocado escuchar y me ha tocado hacer órdenes en la corte de estudiante contra estudiante, porque se están peleando, se están enojando, le quitaron al novio o muchas veces el novio se pone muy posesivo, o a lo mejor la novia muy posesiva, y es cuando empiezan los problemas, empiezan a estar, como decimos, a andar tras de ellas, y mucho es por las redes sociales. Desgraciadamente,
Sí, eso fue muy
afortunadamente,
importante mencionar.
desgraciadamente las redes sociales pueden ser buenas para muchas cosas, pero malas cuando se están usando para estar agrediendo, para estar diciendo cosas, ¿no?
Haciendo bullying, ¿no?
Haciendo bullying entre ellos mismos. Igual, como mencionó Ryan, está el programa de jóvenes en Mariposa, pero creo que no es suficiente el que esté ese programa. En mi opinión personal, a mí me gustaría que hubiera mucho más. Estaría muy padre que se pudiera llevar la educación a todos los jóvenes, pero igual a los adultos no nos van a escuchar. Pienso que si encontramos jóvenes que estén dispuestos a estar pasando todo eso,
Entonces lo que
estaría
necesitas es
genial.
programas más jóvenes.
Yo pienso que necesitamos
Ok,
más
muy bien,
programas
hay
para
que,
jóvenes.
pues,
Estaría ideal.
that's good. I'll do what I can to help that program grow. Reach out to me and we'll start it for sure.
Estaría perfecto.
Okay. Muy bien. Is there anything else about the program that we need to mention? I mean, we just had our trained guests come through, so that's going to be. So anybody who's watching, whatever type of, if they feel like they're being abused, or they're in an abusive relationship or anything like that, how can they reach out to you for more information? What is the best and safest way?
The best way is to call our number, 520-375-6050, and ask to speak to an advocate, or briefly explain your situation, and whoever's answering will get you connected to one of us. We're Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And then if you'd also like some information, we also have an Instagram page at
Sometimes online information is the safest because there's no physical footprint.
Yep. So you can go to at stoptheviolence_SCC and follow us on Instagram. We've had people DM us, and that's been another way we've connected. And then some other things you can do is just pay attention to your surroundings in the community. We have lots of flyers out there and posters with our information and our number and some safe ways you can access it. So we'll say it. We'll say it that way. And also, if you're going to the clinic and you have an appointment, let your provider know, let your MA know, and they can reach out to us and we can be there immediately at those appointments.
So another thing that we all, anytime you're on, we drive this point home is that confidentiality is key. I mean, this is a small community, and I know that people are concerned about coming forward with things like this. So can you assure them that everything is confidential in between you guys?
Confidentiality is one of the most important parts of our job. We cannot discuss anything about your participation in our program unless there's written authorization. And that's even working with other agencies, as well as that's why we are willing to meet you in whatever safe, confidential space that is best for that person. And if someone calls our phone and we don't know who it is, we are not going to say who we are, right? We're going to do everything we can to keep you safe. And that's our main priority, and confidentiality is part of that. And like I said, our program serves the entire community. So if someone's a Mariposa patient, this isn't part of your patient package or anything. This is a separate service. So we keep everything confidential. That's our biggest priority.
That is awesome. Okay, en español, no, pues primero, si alguien está en una relación abusado, no, si está abusada esa persona, ¿cómo pueden contactar a ustedes? ¿Qué es la mejor manera, la manera más segura para contactar a ustedes, para empezar a salir de esa situación?
Nos pueden contactar en la Clínica Mariposa al 520-375-6050. Okay. Pueden llamar, pedir que una intercesora de casos, alguien que trabaja en violencia doméstica o abuso sexual, los atienda. Créanme que se van a la persona que está encargada de los teléfonos nos va a buscar y vamos a poderle dar el servicio que necesita en ese momento, ya sea que haya pasado por una situación de abuso doméstico o abuso sexual o que lo esté experimentando en el momento. Y lo que nosotros hacemos es todo confidencial. Firmamos un papel donde la participante, la cliente, está entrando al programa y nosotros estamos firmando como asegurándole que va a haber confidencialidad en todo el proceso. Como dicen, es una comunidad que es chica, entonces tratamos de ser lo más prudentes posibles, buscamos el lugar seguro para la persona, no nada más que sea seguro donde no esté la persona que los está atacando, sino también por los familiares o las personas que están alrededor de ellos. Tratamos de ser lo más prudentes posibles y hacemos todo para que la persona esté segura y nosotros también. Entonces tratamos de buscar los lugares que ellos se sientan cómodos, sea en casa, sea en un lugar público, sea en la clínica, sea en el hospital, donde quiera que esa persona se encuentre, nosotros podemos ir y ofrecerles el servicio. Nosotros nos encontramos de lunes a viernes, de 8 a 5 de la tarde, se pueden comunicar con nosotros y nosotros vamos a estar, cualquiera de nosotras tres que trabajamos en el departamento, podemos atenderles.
Ok, y también por Instagram, mencionó Lorraine que por Instagram hay mucha información y hay gente que les han contactado por DM, ¿no? Por Instagram también, es otra manera.
Así es, Stop the Violence, se meten a Instagram y nos pueden contactar también, nos mandan un mensaje y también en cuanto nosotros recibamos el mensaje, nosotros podemos ir al lugar donde necesita vernos.
Okay, so one more time, if you guys want to address the camera with the phone number and the Instagram so people will know where to.
It is 520-375-6050, and our Instagram is at stoptheviolence_SCC.
Okay.
Ok, el número de teléfono es 520-375-6050. Igual pueden preguntar por cualquier intercesora de violencia doméstica y nos pueden contactar.
Ok.
El
¿Y el
Instagram,
Instagram?
no me lo sé de memoria,
Pues
pero
sí, ya lo mencionó, pero es Stop the Violence, @Stop the Violence _SCC.
SCC.
Ok, muy bien. Ahí está el gráfico va a salir abajo, todo lo van a ver. Thank you guys so much. Muchísimas gracias por venir conmigo aquí a platicar del programa que tienen de este mes muy importante de Domestic Violence Awareness. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to have you back, of course. So, but if there's any information that you guys can send us, we'll absolutely distribute it to the community. So that people have better access and better information on this program and how to get out of these situations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gracias por tenernos.
And we'll see you guys next week.